The next generation of great Catholic podcasting is here. This is what your brain has been waiting for. Topics that come up around the dinner table will be given the truth treatment, all from a Catholic perspective. Sit back, relax, grab your cup of coffee, and enjoy the show. You've just joined Monday Mornings with Matt and Kevin.
It's a Monday morning, and we are back. Yes, that's right. You got both of us back, me and Matt. Matt had quite the week. I was also a bit sick, so both of us coming back from some difficult times. But we're back here with you all, and happy for it. And today, well, we got some pretty juicy topics. Now, as everyone knows, we tend to like to talk about all sorts of different things: culture, politics, baseball, movies, and of course, we also talk about what's going on in the Novus Ordo and with Bergoglio, etc. And well, this week, that's really where the juicy stuff has been. And Matt also found a really interesting article, and just straight from Fox News of all places, saying that the Catholic priests identify less and less, or almost practically not at all, as liberal or progressive since Vatican II. Now, pretty interesting. We're going to talk about that, but then we're also going to talk, of course, about the dismissal of Bishop, quote unquote, Strickland from Tyler, Texas. Of course, a very big critic of Bergoglio, is now, I guess he's still a bishop, but he does not have an ordinate. And so he has no more he doesn't have a diocese. He's just kind of, maybe you know, Matt, I haven't looked into this at all where he is now. Is he just kind of floating out there?
No, the only thing that I got in relation to that was they removed his account, calling him the Bishop of Tyler. So that's been deleted. But as far as his status and whatnot, I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, he has the holy orders, well, the Novus Ordo orders, so they're gonna, I don't think they can do anything about that. But where he's going, there have been people suggesting that he does, things like join the SSPX and go on a sound. There's a million different opinions thrown around, but we'll get to that. Oh,
but it's so much to talk about. It's wild. The reactions from the Recognize and Resist folks is as wild as everyone would imagine, and definitely stuff that we can talk about. I mean, I'm pretty much the Pope being anathematized by some of our favorite people.
Who are you to say he's not the Pope?
Exactly. Yeah, you can't say he's not the Pope, but I'm gonna say he's going to hell. So let's anyway. But let's start with the first topic, Matt. I know you've done more research into this. I looked into this. I have an opinion on this, but lead us off.
Yeah, so this is a study from Fox News, and the headline here, and you can just kind of Google this and it'll pull it up for anyone who wants to just read it for themselves. It's called Catholic Priests, they're speaking of Novus Ordo land here, identifying as liberal or progressive have, quote, all but vanished from the seminaries. So then the sub headline here is over 80% of priests ordained since 2020 identify themselves as theologically conservative. And my first question, actually, when I saw that headline was, is that a thing? Like, do you poll seminarians or like, right. All right, now that you're ordained, like, how liberal are you? Or how conservative? I don't know how they even got this, but so if you dig a bit deeper into the article, it does say here that some numbers. So it says a comprehensive study polling thousands of Catholic Novus Ordo priests found that new clerics identifying as politically liberal or progressive have vanished from the seminaries in the United States. The study was produced by the Catholic University of America, speaking with 131 bishops, 3,516 priests, and an in-depth interview of over 100 priests. Simply put, the article says, the portion of new priests who see themselves as politically liberal or theologically progressive has been steadily declining since the Second Vatican Council and is now all but vanished. So then just a little bit more here. It says, this is a sharp contrast to priests ordained before 1960, in which at that time, over 60% of them identified as either progressive or very progressive. Speaking of now, 80% identify as conservative or orthodox. And so that there's really not much more there. There is a chart you can kind of look at, and the numbers do, coincide with what the colors coincide with what we're looking at here. But the thing that I find strange about all of this is somebody pointed out on Twitter, and there's that very popular Novus Ordo priest, Matthew Schneider. Is it? I believe his name is. And somebody said, like, he would be considered conservative. in these days overall. And I think, you think of the cultural movement, you think of what, how the church has been shaped. I think a lot of the things that aren't said in this article is, well, when the Second Vatican Council was promulgated and coming out, the ideas that came through the council were quite progressive. Things like, say, religious liberty and collegiality, these things that the council put forth were pretty progressive. So men back then who coincided with the council were probably considered progressive ideas, right? So if I believe what the council teaches, well, then I guess I'm pretty much a progressive. And that's what this group kind of formed out to be. But when they use the term conservative, how many in there are probably going to say they're doing nothing but looking at a conservative interpretation of the Second Vatican Council? They're not viewing it as something that can't come from the church. They're not viewing it as something that can't be from the spotless bride of Christ. They're just trying to develop a so-called conservative twist on it. And I think when you examine these men who do identify as conservative and look at what they actually put out, I'm thinking of liturgy, right? They're probably more inclined to those reverent Novus Ordos and moving away from those folk guitar things that kind of were a product of the 60s. But still, the meat and potatoes, if I can use that term, is still there. It's still conciliar. So just because they perform more reverent liturgy with nice music or chant or view things in a more quote unquote conservative light, doesn't mean that they see true issue with the council, doesn't mean they see the council as not coming from the spotless bride of Christ, as they just said, but really just viewing it through a different lens. So is this really, a lot of people on Twitter are saying this is huge news, this is progress, this is such a victory. I mean, maybe in some ways, but I don't think it's the big home run grand slam win that people think.
No, they moved the goalpost, man. I mean, of course not. I mean, as you said it exactly. My take on it as well. That before Vatican II, so you look at the times of Pius XII, or especially the time of, say, Pius X. I mean, you had a much more conservative world. I mean, you had the Legion of Decency. You had a world that was becoming more and more modern, and modernism was definitely affecting it, as we know, but it was still conservative. I mean, people dressed modestly, etc. You'd have in the 1920s, if you went to the beach, people would measure, the length of your bathing suits. So it was just a more conservative world. So when you look at that and look at then how they went into Vatican II, of course, if you want to change anything kind of, progressive, progress anything, then you were just considered more progressive. And now after Vatican II, Vatican II was so extreme. It was so extreme. And after Vatican II, the 60s and everything that changed so quickly and so abruptly and so rapidly, intensely. I mean, just a crazy switch in everything. You look at the conservative 1950s, look at the housewife, and then you look at the 1960s of free love and everything. So it was a complete, about turn. And then, okay, of course, so if you then compare after that bang complete turnaround, then everyone is conservative because you're basing it off of the 1960s. It's like, well, 60s. Yeah, of course you are. I mean, maybe anybody can be more conservative compared to what happened at Vatican II. And the Vatican II sets the basis for everything. So exactly as you said, that's kind of the line now.
In the study, Kev, it didn't go into it. It says here the study did not attempt, and I wish it did, to decipher the cause of such drastic changes in their ideological framework in recent years, but offered the Second Vatican Council as a watershed moment based on clerics' testimony. So yeah, I mean, if you base things off of what happened then, like, sure. But again, how are they defining conservative? Like, if you really get to the heart of it, what does that even mean? Like, what are you conservative in? Are you more pro-life? Is that considered more conservative? I don't know. I mean, it's hard to kind of to catch the pendulum here as to what exactly is this even trying to put forward. And again, the only thing that rationalizes to me is a more reverent, quote unquote, reverent liturgy. Maybe not those crazy things of the 60s and that you and I probably grew up in and saw, but a bit more solemnness, I think, and that would be somehow, some way considered conservative and good. Totally missing the point that these doctrines put forth and promulgated and scattered in every diocese across the world is not Catholic. And you can have any interpretation of it you want. Like, you're still accepting things that are contrary to the faith. And you can't, you're not winning there. So people are looking at this like, oh, well, that 60s, 70s era is dying and they're fading away. And I think that there's a lot to say to that. I think, you look at a lot of these parishes that are closing in the Novus Ordo world, and their population's definitely on the elderly side. But where's this going to go? I don't think anybody can make a really, really good guess. Is it kind of maybe a beginning of a tide to a change? I don't know.
Well, and Matt, look at it this way too. I mean, if you're look at the numbers. This is why statistics don't make any sense in so many cases. Because
true.
I mean, back in the 1950s, you had thousands and thousands of seminarians and priests. Now you have hundreds. That's the truth. The amount of Catholic priests, Novus Ordo priests being ordained is a minuscule amount compared to what it was 50 years ago. So the stats don't match up. So if you're saying 80% now, that would have been what, 8% 50 years ago. So the stats it doesn't matter. So I mean, you can't compare it. It's apples and oranges. It's not the same amount of numbers. Now, if they're saying, if you're comparing like almost like with inflation or deflation of numbers, maybe, but I don't think that's what they're doing. They're just saying 80% of seminarians now. How many seminarians are there in the world right now? Not many. I mean, tiny compared to what it was in 1960. So that's just another example of how this type of thing just doesn't make any sense.
I did look this up, and it's another thing for the so-called, I guess you can say, trad movement, because if you look at the overall number of diocesan Novus Ordo seminarians, they absolutely blow away the SSPX, the Fraternity of St. Peter, the Institute of Christ the King. And I want to say, and this, don't quote me on this, I could be wrong, but I believe most of them, the Society of Pius X, the Institute of Christ the King, they were around like, say, 200, 300 seminarians total, right? I want to say worldwide, Novus Ordo seminarians are almost at 100,000. So if you compare those two things, the traditional movement is very, 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 very small in comparison. And again, I did find here as I was scrolling through, 52% of recently ordained priests identify as conservative, 44% say they're moderate. And again, I got to ask, in what, with what? Communion in the hand? How long confession times should be? I wish there was more things here to pull up, but I'm curious what people think, if they want to kind of jump in the comments. What do these numbers even really mean? Because a lot of people, like I said on Twitter, are encouraged by it, but it's not giving us any direction. I don't, you don't see what it's actually, how they're actually describing their conservatism.
Well, and I think it's okay to be optimistic about it. I don't mean to just be a downer, but I just think these things they're kind of silly. But I mean, I think the crazier Bergoglio gets, the more you're going to have people realize, yeah, this is crazy, this is bad, this isn't Catholic, etc. And I still think you're going to have some watershed moment. If it's Taylor Marshall, Vigano, whoever, somebody's going to say, enough, I can't do this anymore. Truly, this is all garbage. Yeah. I can't do it. I have to be State of Acontis. I mean, Father Altman is a State of Acontis right now. Now, he only took the first step of that by saying, yeah, exactly. Yeah. He just said that Bergoglio is not the Pope, but he doesn't admit anything else that comes from that. So it's not obviously the full truth, but it's a step. It is. And I mean, and you do see these things. I tend to think it could also be Bergoglio or whoever the next quote unquote Pope is saying, hey, we're no longer going to call ourselves the Catholic Church. We're just going to be the Church of the world. I think that's to me, that's really a possibility. I mean, maybe that's too good to be true, but I think it's okay to have hope. I think it's good to believe that there is a conservative movement, because it is true. You do see it. You do see a lot of young people wanting to go to the Latin Mass. Look at Jordan Peterson. He's not young, but it is changing, and that is good. That is absolutely something we should be happy about. We too. I mean, yeah, we understand that their masses are almost surely not valid, but what are we, we can't blame them. These people want tradition and truth, and they're just not quite there yet. They haven't seen these steps, but how can we expect everyone to have seen those steps? I mean, many people don't even understand the issues at all, or just now saying, okay, this guy can't be Pope, but what does that mean? I mean, what do we do? And so that's where I totally sympathize, and think we can totally be optimistic about the movement.
And I think too of the conciliar popes that have made their way through. John the 23rd and Paul the 6th, and I think you and I have touched on this a few times, they were really, innovators. They really just bulldozed a brand new everything, right? They had a council, they had a new liturgy, new sacrament, new rites of sacraments, new everything, just came in and bulldozed. And I think that was so progressive that people who were quote unquote with the Pope were aligned with him. And in a certain sense, it's like, okay, they did go along with it because in their minds they were clinging with the vicar of Christ, and they went along with whatever he implemented, which to a certain extent, like, okay, check, like you're doing what you really should do. But then came in, and I remember I talked with you about this maybe a year or so ago now at this point, but John Paul II really had a what was the term? John Paul II conservative was kind of like the phrase that was tossed around a lot. Like he was conservative in areas of women's ordination, of abortion, of marriage, and all of those things. And he had almost like a cult populist following of him. And then Benedict came in, and the numbers I think went up even more. And then of course Francis, being a total product of the council, just completely did a nosedive from what people were kind of building up towards with that hope of John Paul II and Benedict and whatnot. So I think, as you said, I think Francis is really helping the cause out a lot for people who do want to be sincere in their faith, and they do want to practice their faith and do it as they believe they are rightly doing. They see problems here, and that's going to kind of tie us into our next topic, but they recognize that something is wrong here. They're misguided in a lot of their conclusions, but they do want to live a true Catholic faith, and they see that something isn't quite right here. And did you want to use that to kind of jump into
our
next
perfect. Yeah, I mean, exactly. Well, I think it matches right, because now people are really saying, okay, look at what as you've seen on Twitter. I haven't been on Twitter, but I've seen it even spilling over into Facebook. This like, well, this can't happen. How can this happen? The Bishop of Tyler being booted because of his conservative opinions.
You want to know what I love, Kev? They use the phrase "forcibly removed." Was the headline from Raymond Arroyo of EWTN. What did that look like? Did guards go in there and shoot? So he was
stormtroopers.
Yes. Star Wars. They shot in. So here's what happened. November 9th, which was a Thursday, they asked him to resign. On November 10th, I believe, is when he said, no, I am not going to resign. And then November 11th, the Saturday, was when he was, quote unquote, forcibly removed. Now, here's the thing that has really got me, and I kind of don't know where I want to start first because there's a lot of material here. I guess I can say the first thing that really stuck out to me is Michael Matt, and I'm going to read his tweet. There's a few other tweets as well that I kind of want to go through really quick, but people are up in arms over Francis doing this. He's taking out, they call him America's bishop because he's so-called slightly conservative, and they took him out. So the first thing, before I even read Michael Matt's tweet, is there's been an uproar. There's actually a march for him now. Next Saturday, I think it is, there's a march to save Bishop Strickland, because we're nothing but a democracy where we can vote our way through this. But people are calling him an anti-pope now, and to me, this is, if I wanted to throw that term at him, this would be one of my least likely accusations of him, to remove a bishop. I mean, that he can do whatever he pleases with that.
To remove a bishop who has criticized him for years?
Right. Now he's suddenly an anti-pope. He can say there's things like there's no such thing as a Catholic God. If you don't have mass, just go to the Anglicans. We could list a whole bunch of things. There are far more things that are far more worrisome to me than him being an anti-pope, than removing a bishop from a diocese in Texas. But anyway, so Michael Matt, on his Twitter account, head of the remnant here, he said this is a total war. Francis is a clear and present danger. Didn't know that Pope could be that way. A danger to not only Catholics the world over, but to the world itself. It now appears that he is actively trying to bury fidelity to the Church of Jesus Christ. Before I read the next line here, I want to emphasize that the Church of Jesus Christ and the Catholic Church, Vatican II, denies exclusivity between the two, which is another headache. So a few strikes here, but here's the real winner here. You can look this up. Michael Matt tweeted this on November 11th at 6:57 a.m. Eastern time. In regards to Francis, let him be anathema. We were talking about this before we started. These are the people who tell us we have no authority to say that Francis cannot be the Pope. We cannot apply our faith and say, well, knowing X, Y, and Z about what the church teaches about the papacy, then I conclude that Francis cannot have the divine assistance. And they say, who are you to say that? Well, he just said, let him be anathema, as if he's got some Council of Trent Vatican I authority here behind him to anathematize the Pope. But another point here too, let me jump back to this, is a tweet somebody brought out from Bishop Strickland, and I got to pull this up really quick. It was about in May. Yeah, here it is. Okay. So Bishop Strickland said, please allow me to clarify regarding, quote, Patrick Coffin has challenged the authenticity of Pope Francis. If this is accurate, I disagree. I believe Pope Francis is the Pope. This is Strickland speaking, but it is time for me to say that I reject his program for undermining the deposit of faith. Just follow Jesus. That was Bishop Strickland in May. So a few things I wanted to point out here before I kind of dive into some opinions. First, a true Pope can't undermine the deposit of faith. So if I'm Francis, right, and I truly am the vicar of Christ, and some bishop in a diocese is hitting me with all these accusations, I'm going to investigate. He is questioning my authority. He's questioning what I'm doing. He's questioning my position in the church, and he's telling me that I'm undermining the deposit of faith. You're a threat to me, and I have every right and every power and every authority to remove you in whatever means. So Francis did here what he's within his rights as if he were vicar of Christ to do. But Strickland mistakenly says here, follow Jesus. And again, they're doing something that is completely incompatible with Catholicism. I don't have this quote in front of me now, but they're pitting Christ against the Pope. That in order to follow Christ, we have to ignore Francis, pretend he's not there, disobey him, resist him, revolt against him if necessary, just follow Christ instead. Well, in the church, we know that by following the Pope, we are guaranteed to be following Christ. They're so closely united to one another that they form one head, as Pope Urban the Eighth taught, and or Boniface, I'm sorry, the Eighth taught, and Pius XII said specifically that all our predecessors have explicitly stated. So by following the Pope, we're following Christ. Now, here's a point that I wanted to make up, and it was from Bishop Giuseppe Sarto, the future Pope Pius the 10th. And I think this is very, very powerful here. Because people are Kennedy Hall and Taylor Marshall, they're all throwing out these, oh, you're a Pope splainer. The Pope can be wrong. You need to stop following the Pope. And he's really just somebody, he's just in the way. He's just in the way of us being true Catholics, in the way of us following Christ. Listen to what Bishop Sarto, the future Pope Pius X, has to say. And I'm going to read this slowly and kind of emphasize certain parts, because it's the Catholic response here, and it welds us more so to the Novus Ordo people who are defending Francis than it does to the semi-trad. So Pius X, then Bishop Sarto, in 1887, wrote this in a book. It's from F.A. Forbes, called Pope St. Pius X, 1987, pages 34. So that's my citation. So Pius X said, all the strength in the church is in the Pope. Already that shut up like 90 million semi-trads here. All of the foundations of our faith are based on the successor of Peter. Those who wish her ill assault the papacy in every way possible. They cut themselves adrift from the church, and they try their best to make the Pope an object of hatred and contempt. And here is what he says that we need to do, we should do. The more they, so the people who attack the Pope, the more they endeavor to weaken our faith and our attachment to the head of the church, the more let us closely draw to him through the public testimony of our faith, our obedience, and our veneration. So I'm going to read the whole thing one more time slow and just kind of pick it apart just a little bit. All the strength in the church is in the Pope. All of the foundations of our faith are based on the successor of Peter. Those who wish her ill assault to the papacy in every way possible, they cut themselves adrift from the church and try their best to make the Pope an object of hatred and contempt. The more they endeavor to weaken our faith and our attachment to the head of the church, the more closely let us draw to him through the public testimony of our faith, our obedience, and our veneration, end quote. So in a time like this, when the so-called vicar of Christ is removing a bishop from a diocese, and all of these people are siding with this bishop and calling Francis an anti-pope and anathematizing him and telling him you are an evil. One of the Twitter accounts said the chair is not vacant, just the evil one is sitting in it. all of these heretical things. The Catholic response is to take a step back and say a bishop is being pitted against the Pope. My job here as a Catholic is to attach myself even more closely to the head of the church, to make a public testimony of our obedience and our veneration to the Supreme Pontiff. That is the Catholic response, and you are always safe that way. Always. So all these people here saying, I'm gonna, go march for Bishop Strickland and face Bergoglio head on. That is a deadly error. The church is always taught, and I just read here for an example from Pius X, that when faced in these times, the Catholic can safely say, I am with the Vicar of Christ. I am with the Supreme Pontiff. I am with Peter. I am with the head of the church, and I will cling even closer to him in these times of turmoil. And as Saint Catherine of Siena called him, sweet Christ on earth. That is our obligation as Catholics. So it is vital that we recognize Francis to be a false pope, because if we don't, then we're doing a whole bunch of other things that are condemned by the church, condemned by previous popes, and we need to be really, really careful here. So a lot of these people, they, in their hearts, they think they're doing well, and they're standing up to Bergoglio, but nothing about this is Catholic at all. The Catholic always sides with the Vicar of Christ, and as Pius X told us, when times like this happen, cling even more closely. The more we should cling closely to the head of the church. Go ahead.
Really simplify this. Michael Matt is saying, "Hey, Pope, publicly. Hey, Pope, publicly. Yes. Hey, Pope, you're going to hell." This is a journalist. That's what he is. He owns a newspaper. He's a journalist.
He writes at the Remnant.
He does have a significant footprint in public voice.
He does.
Saying, "Hey." He's admitting, hey, you're the Pope, and I'm telling you, you're going to hell. That's what this means. This means you are going. It's not like, hey, if you shouldn't do this. I don't like it. Oh, bad. Oh, wah. No, it's saying you're going to hell, because imagine. I just can't even. This is so extreme. It's so absurd that I don't know if people are really stepping back and like, okay, wait, did he seriously say that? He tweeted that? He said the Pope, who he admits being the Pope, is going to hell based on what? Based on Michael Matt's
something he doesn't like.
Judgment? It's insanity, Matt. I mean, it just shows you. But this is the mindset of the recognize and resist. I don't like it, and he's the Pope because I need him to be the Pope, but I don't need to listen to him or anything.
And I wanted to read too, and I've brought this up on the show here before, Kev. St. Alphonsus Liguori, when Pope Clement suppressed the Jesuits. This is always, it's a short line here or two, but very powerful. So when Pope Clement suppressed the Jesuits, St. Alphonsus Liguori was deeply disturbed by this. And you'll notice that he didn't tweet, "Let him be anathema," or he didn't go to the streets and have a protest. He said, "Poor Pope, as for ourselves, we keep silence. We respect the secret judgment of God, and we hold ourselves in peace." Now, dissecting that quote, which Mario did on a Novus Ordo Watch episode a while ago now, when the judgment of the Pope came down, St. Alphonsus Liguori said, we keep silence and respect the secret judgment of God. He understood that Catholic teaching, that whatever the Pope bound on earth or disciplined on earth was rectified in heaven. He called it the judgment of God, and we hold ourselves in peace. So he, as a good Catholic here, didn't like what the Pope did, but he bowed his head in silent obedience. And he said, we respect the judgment of God and hold ourselves in peace. That is the Catholic response here to whatever you don't like. And Pope Pius VI, Pope Pius VI said, in a word, he's advising Catholics, stay close to us. That was from Pius. Stay close to us. Stay with this see. Because no matter what is going on in the world, no matter what bishop, the proximate rule of faith is not a bishop in Tower, Texas. It's always the Vicar of Christ on earth. You look to Rome, and you've got these people using all these terms like they're slander, like, oh, you're such a Pope splainer. A traditional Catholic is a Pope splainer. Look at here. I have the quote here as well. Kennedy Hall and Taylor Marshall, I believe as well, but Kennedy Hall and a few other big accounts are saying all these Pope splainers, they need to meet with traditional Catholics. Traditional Catholics and Pope splainers need to get together so we can have a little dialogue. What would you call this quote from Pius X when he was speaking as Bishop Sardo towards Leo XIII, who was the reigning Pope. He said, Leo the 13th is the guardian of the scriptures, the interpreter of the doctrine of Jesus Christ, the supreme dispenser of the treasures of the church, the head of the Catholic religion, the chief shepherd of souls, the infallible teacher, and the secure guide of who directs us on our way through a world wrapped in darkness and the shadows of death. What a Pope-splainer that sounds like to me. And they use that as an insult.
And how I think about it, Matt, too, think about it this way. What if it was the other way around? What if, let's just say, God willing, somehow we get a true Pope, Pope Pius the 13th. Somehow. Mm-hmm. Don't ask me how, I'm not going to go into that, but let's just say it happens, mm-hmm. Okay? And we get that. And then, he says, I don't know, no more pride flags flying in the churches, whatever. He makes a rule that, and it's like conservative rule. And I don't know, some guy, Joe Smith, gets on a podcast and says, this cannot stand. I cannot believe this. Let him be anathema. And think of it the other way around, Matt. I mean, it's like, wait, we would roll our eyes like, yo, bro, you can't do that. Nobody cares. He's the Pope, and you're some guy who's saying he should go to hell because he's doing something you don't like. It's so absurd. How do these people think this way, man? It's because they don't understand the papacy, and it shows right. Over and over again. They don't get it.
They do it as they see the church as a club of people who just need to find one another who have coinciding opinions, which is why, people travel and they say, all I have to do is I have to find a Latin mass, right? I have to find people who are in agreement with me. I'm going to be out of town this weekend. I'm going to, travel across country. I just need to find a Latin mass. They're looking for a conformity of opinions because they totally forget that that's not the church. The church is a perfect society of men, of membership of men in this perfect society under the visible head of Christ. And Pope Pius the 12th, he said there can be no real opposition or conflict between the invisible mission of the Holy Spirit and the juridical commission of the ruler and teacher received from Christ. There could be no hidden and invisible church. You can't divorce the two, and that's the mistake people are making. Right. Is they're looking at the deposit of faith and they're divorcing it from the hierarchy, as if that's not what the church even is. And so it's very, very dangerous. But you're right; they will only side with people that they agree with. And Michael Lofton, the Reason in Theology host, he made a good point the other day, or yesterday, or whatever day it was, as well. When he was like, Taylor Marshall was all up in arms, of course. And he's like, so you can call the man you call the Holy Father a demon, the Antichrist, all these slurs. But when somebody insults Strickland, you're all of a sudden up in arms about it. And again, it's kind of a good point. Sure. We find ourselves in a lot of agreement with the Novus Ordo crowd here because they do have an understanding of the whole. I saw somebody who's he attends the Novus Ordo and all of these things, and he tweeted, the Holy See is judged by no one. And I wish I can find this for you now. It just came into me, but somebody posted a picture of Francis and it had a quote above it, or just a caption above it. The powers of the Pope and whatnot, and people were just totally destroying him. He got ratioed, I guess you would call it, online. And then later on in the day, he said, "This was a trick. I didn't write that caption. I copied and pasted an old catechism for you." So it's funny how people, they're choosing to throw out a whole bunch of Catholic teachings and doctrines and all of these things in the papacy rather than throw out Francis. So very interesting development, Kev. I'm not sure what Strickland is going to do. Hopefully he obeys whom he reveres as the Holy Father, successor of Peter. But we'll see. So we've got a whole month of November here, month of the Holy Souls to pray about it. Did you go to the cemetery? Did you make your any indulgences? Yes.
Oh, we go. I mean, it's one of my favorite times of the year. Actually, we try to go at least once a week. I mean, usually 2 or 3 times a week. We have a beautiful cemetery here in our little town, up on kind of like on a mountainside. Old graves from late 1800s, early 1900s. Really a beautiful, beautiful cemetery, and I love it. It's really, I don't love November. I don't like winter. I don't like cold, but really the praying for the Holy Souls, it's really one of my favorite things of the whole Catholic year.
I put it on Twitter. I found an old cemetery that I was going through, and they had gravestones. I can send you a picture from 1790 on
Wow.
it. People died,
Wow.
and it's funny. Like you touch that, I touched it, and I was like, "Is this is the the original? This is from the 1700s."
Wow.
Pretty neat. And the way they worded it, oh no, I can't remember, but it was like so and so lived up to his 87th year of age, or it was a weird way of putting that he died. I don't know.
Wow.
I got to relook at it,
Cool.
but I agree. It is a very it's a cold month, and we're leading into winter, but a very good time for the church as we prepare for. We're almost at Advent, man.
Yeah. Well, and
Man,
I
oh
mean,
man.
I know it. It's crazy. The time just goes crazy. But it's something that I highly recommend to everyone. It's not like I'm an expert on this, but to study the liturgical year, the actual liturgical year, not necessarily the book, but how the year works, and how
It's structured.
how it's structured. How did the church build this
It's beautiful.
season? And it's an amazing thing, and it's really almost I don't want to say scientific, but there's a real reasoning behind it all. You can see it's divinely guided, that it is. There's so much of a structure to it, and it works with the seasons, and it works with your mood, and it works with building on top of each other. You go through the kind of the dark times of November, and then the suffering times of Advent into the joyous times of Christmas. And it's one of those beautiful things that you get through Advent, and this is something that people really need to pay attention to during Advent, is that you're supposed to to fast and sacrifice and all these things, but then you're also supposed to really celebrate Christmas. Christmas isn't supposed to be one day. This is supposed to be 12. It's actually even more. You're actually supposed to keep going. I forget exactly.
Until February.
It's until February, right?
Yeah.
So you celebrate big for 12 days, and you celebrate kind of small for the rest.
Right.
And that's actually really what we should do. There's a reasoning behind that, because again, the season then leads into Lent almost directly. And then it's back. Then you go down the roller, then or I shouldn't say the roller coaster, but then then you go down in your emotions, and then you have Easter, and it's up in your emotions. And there's a real science behind it, and it's beautiful. A book I highly recommend. I think I've recommended this on podcasts before. Is the oh boy, what's it called? The Around the Year. Oh boy, I can't remember it. It's from Maria von Trapp. Around the Year. I forget. But it's really good. Someone email me if you're interested. I'll try to find it because we've had it. And she just gives really good traditions and stuff that you can work along through these liturgical seasons. And they're awesome. They're beautiful. And it makes life so much more interesting, Matt. It's awesome. I love it.
Yeah. And it, I guess not every part of the world, but oftentimes it coincides with the seasons too. How the temperatures and the weather and the even just snowfall. Like, I don't know. There's something just.
I mean, come on.
Perfect.
I mean, November, the month of the Holy Souls, the leaves are falling, the skies are gray. And again, that's how it is here. I'm sure where you are too. I mean, it works. It's just like that's how it's supposed to be. And then Christmas, it's snowy and cold but beautiful, and you have that kind of freshness in the air, and it really is it's very neat, and it's something that the feast days of the church and how they can be celebrated individually it's just awesome. I mean, it's really good stuff. I actually, it's another thing I highly recommend anyone to go check out my mom's blog that she wrote for years, and she covers a lot of this stuff in detail. How you can celebrate different feasts, and she's got hundreds and hundreds of posts. I'll post that in the link, the link in the description, I should say. It's a highly recommendable and tons of content. And very good stuff. As anyone who listens to the podcast knows, my mom is she's got
a good voice.
She's got a great voice, and she's a great writer. Voice. I mean, because she writes everything that she voices. I mean, she's a talented lady. Really good stuff. And yeah, enjoy the time. Don't get too oversaturated with bishops in Texas getting the boot. Use it. Moderation. Moderation is the key to happiness and all that jazz.
The new thing that especially people like Ripperger are putting out there. Don't look at it. Forget the church is there. Who did that too?
Oh boy.
Was it Kennedy Hall? No. Somebody. That's the new thing nowadays. Pretend the church isn't there. That's it. That's the answer.
I tell you that's the last trick of the devil in this whole thing. And I really think it's the last trick, is to make everyone believe it's only the Latin Mass, and everything else just ignore everything else. Don't pay attention to any of the hierarchy, the doctrine, the dogma. it's only the Latin Mass that matters because and you see why people do it, and you see why they go there, and it's a good first step, but it's only a first step. I mean, because if you only go there and the background of it's like the iceberg, the mass is that what you see, but underneath it is so much more. And there's so much to what we actually have from the church. And the devil just says, no, it's all right. No, only this. Don't look at anything else. You look at this. And, that's what we see these days. And it makes it so few people are willing to admit that, well, there cannot be a pope in Rome right now. And there cannot have been a pope since 1958.
Right.
I guess that's a good way to wrap it up.
It is.
Hopefully we didn't upset anybody too much, except for maybe Michael Matt. That was one of the dumbest tweets I've ever seen in my life. So I hope you're upset. I'm sure you're watching this podcast. If not, someone pointed out to him that we definitely think that was a really, I don't know if I've ever seen a tweet with a crazier, off base. Oh my goodness. Unbelievable. Yeah. Who are we to judge Michael Matt for dumb tweets? Let's
stop proselytizing.
Let's leave it alone. All right, everybody. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Please like, share, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Reach out to Matt on Twitter, me on Facebook, or email. You can email me at kevin89davis@gmail.com. If you want to, again, through the week, say, hey, you guys should talk about this. I'm also going to be doing live shows on Saturdays. At least that's the plan at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So check that out and show up in the comments because it's really fun. It's really cool. It's like you get a lot of the people who view and comment and are on Twitter and Facebook, and they all kind of come together during a show. And it's fun. It's actually a lot of fun. So we're going to do a show this week. I hope to have a priest on. That definitely is the plan, is to have a priest, again, 2 p.m. Eastern time, to talk about whatever's in the news and also perhaps answer your questions live. So pretty cool stuff. Again, that's on Saturday. Anyway, till then, and until next Monday, Matt, we'll see you then.
Make the world Catholic again.